Sometimes the most painful truth is also the most liberating. No one really cares. Not in the way you wish they would. Not in the way you imagine when you're quietly breaking down, hoping someone notices. The world keeps spinning, indifferent to your struggles, your victories, your tears. And that realization, when it finally hits you, not with bitterness, but with clarity, becomes your greatest strength. Welcome to Stoic Valor, where every word is crafted to awaken your inner resilience and remind you that the fortress you seek already stands within you. For centuries, the Stoics understood a truth that modern society constantly avoids: dependence on the opinions, recognition, or sympathy of others is a chain that binds the mind. The moment you stop expecting the world to care about your suffering, your goals, your pain, that is the moment you become truly free. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." When you no longer seek validation, you stop performing for the crowd and start living for yourself. Imagine walking through life realizing that no one owes you understanding, that your sadness doesn't obligate others to listen, your dreams don't require applause, and your failures don't demand pity. At first, this thought feels cruel. It feels like rejection. But the Stoics would say it's the purest form of liberation. Because the moment you accept that no one cares, you also accept that the only person responsible for your peace, your growth, and your direction is you. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality, and nowhere is this truer than in our desire to be seen." We imagine that our worth is diminished when others ignore us. We create stories in which being unnoticed means being unworthy, but those stories are illusions. The universe is not against you. It simply doesn't revolve around you. It moves as it always has, indifferent but consistent, harsh but fair. The Stoic learns to flow with it, not fight against it. When Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations, he wasn't writing for fame or approval. He was journaling as a way to strengthen his soul against the storms of existence. He reminded himself daily, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." To accept that no one cares is not to become cold. It is to become grounded in reality. You stop living for sympathy and start living for purpose. You stop wasting energy trying to be understood and instead invest it in understanding yourself. The Stoics were warriors of the mind. They stood firm in the face of public scorn, betrayal, and loneliness, not because they were immune to emotion, but because they refused to give their peace away. In our modern age, this lesson is more vital than ever. Social media has made validation an addiction. Every like, comment, or view feeds the illusion that we matter only when others acknowledge us. But Stoicism calls us to step away from that noise, to remember that meaning does not come from others' attention, but from our own alignment with virtue. To accept that no one cares is not nihilism, it's maturity. It's understanding that your parents, your friends, even your closest loved ones, have their own storms to survive. You stop expecting the world to pause for your pain, and instead you become compassionate. Not because you want to be noticed, but because you understand the silent struggles everyone faces. When you stop needing care, you begin to offer it freely. That is the paradox of Stoicism. Detachment births empathy. Let's look deeper into why this truth holds such power. When you realize that no one cares, you stop performing. You stop trying to be liked, and you begin to live honestly. You start speaking truth, not because it's popular, but because it's right. You take action not for applause, but for excellence itself. This is the Stoics' way, to act in alignment with nature, meaning in alignment with reason, integrity, and courage. You realize that self-reliance is not isolation. It's the recognition that everything essential for peace is already within you. Epictetus taught, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The same principle applies to emotional wealth. When your wants are few, when you no longer crave recognition, pity, or external validation, you are unshakable. No one can take from you what you do not depend upon. When you stop expecting others to care, you gain invulnerability. Think about how much energy you waste trying to make others see your worth. Every explanation, every defense, every moment spent justifying your choices drains your spirit. The Stoic refuses to engage in that endless performance. He lives quietly, focused, grounded. He knows that virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance is enough. He does not need applause for doing what is right. He finds contentment in the act itself. There's a kind of silence that follows when you truly accept that no one cares. At first it's heavy, lonely, then slowly it becomes peaceful. You begin to move differently. You stop chasing. You stop complaining. You start creating. You stop saying, "No one understands me," and start saying, "I understand myself." That is when life transforms. Modern philosophers like Ryan Holiday echo this same wisdom in works like "The Obstacle is the Way." He writes that our greatest freedom lies in how we respond, not what happens to us. When you realize no one cares, you free yourself from the weight of expectation, and that freedom gives you clarity. You begin to live with focus. You start doing what matters, not what pleases. You start walking your path, even when no one watches. This idea isn't about abandoning humanity, it's about transcending dependency, because caring is not the problem. Expecting others to care as you do, that's where suffering begins. The Stoics believed in service, in contributing to society, in acting with kindness. But they acted from virtue, not from need. They gave because it was right, not because they wanted gratitude. When no one cares, your motivation must come from something deeper, your principles. And principles, unlike people's opinions, never abandon you. So when you face neglect, indifference, or betrayal, pause. Remember Marcus Aurelius. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. But none of them can harm me. Why? Because harm only exists where expectation does. If you remove expectation, you remove the wound. This is the heart of Stoicism. The world is not cruel, it's indifferent. And once you stop fighting that indifference, you find calm in its rhythm. You realize that peace was never out there. It was always within you, waiting for your acceptance of what is. When you accept that no one cares, you no longer need to prove yourself. You no longer chase validation. You begin to act from integrity alone. And ironically, that is when others start to notice. Not because you asked for attention, but because strength, real strength, doesn't need to be announced. It radiates, so breathe. Let go of the need to be understood. The Stoics remind us that the world doesn't owe us compassion, but we owe ourselves discipline. No one has to care for you to care deeply about life. No one has to notice your journey for it to have meaning. The meaning exists because you chose to live it fully. You've accepted the truth. No one truly cares, not in the way you once hoped they would. So now what? What happens after that realization settles in your bones? What do you do once the illusion shatters and you see the world as it is? Indifferent, but not malicious. That's where the work begins. Because Stoicism is not a philosophy of despair. It's a philosophy of empowerment. The Stoics never told us to stop caring about life. They told us to stop depending on others, to validate our care. Once you realize that no one cares, you reclaim your power to act without waiting for permission. Every morning you wake up, you face a choice: to live as a victim of neglect or as the architect of resilience. Marcus Aurelius began each day reminding himself that others would lie, cheat, or disappoint, but he refused to let that make him bitter. He knew that people act according to their nature, and expecting otherwise only multiplies frustration. When you wake up tomorrow, remember this: no one has to care for you to rise. No one has to believe in you for your effort to matter. The only approval you truly need is your own. Let's make this real. Imagine two people climbing a mountain. The first constantly looks back, seeking reassurance, hoping others notice how hard he's climbing. The second focuses on each step, silent and steady. The first is motivated by validation, and when no one watches, his energy fades. The second climbs for the sake of the climb. He reaches the summit not because he was celebrated, but because he was consistent. Stoicism calls you to become that second person, to do what must be done, whether the world applauds or not. So how do you practice this daily? It begins with awareness. Every time you feel the urge to explain yourself, to prove your worth, pause. Ask, who am I doing this for? If the answer is not for my own growth, for my own integrity, then you are handing your peace away. Stop justifying your path to those who haven't walked it. Silence, discipline, and action. These are your teachers now. Seneca said, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you." This doesn't mean surrounding yourself with cheerleaders. It means seeking those who challenge you to grow, who mirror your strength, not your weakness. The people who truly understand you don't need explanations. They see the quiet fire in your consistency. To cultivate inner independence, start simple. Here's a Stoic-inspired morning ritual. Before touching your phone, sit in silence for 5 minutes. Breathe deeply. Remind yourself, today I expect nothing from others, but I will give everything to my actions. This is a declaration of freedom. It resets your expectations and aligns your energy with reality. As Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When no one cares, you respond with focus. When no one notices, you keep moving. When no one helps, you find a way. Another practice, write. Marcus Aurelius wrote not for an audience, but for himself. His meditations were never meant to be published. They were personal reminders to stay grounded amid chaos. You can do the same. Every night, write down 3 questions. What did I do today that aligned with my principles? What did I allow to disturb my peace? What will I do differently tomorrow? This simple exercise builds self-reliance. It reminds you that growth is an internal process, not a performance. Let's talk about pain, because that's where this philosophy becomes real. Suppose you pour your heart into something, a relationship, a project, a dream, and no one notices. The silence feels heavy, but here's the truth. The silence is your teacher. It shows you who you are when no one is watching. If you can still give your best when the world is silent, you have reached Stoic strength. Seneca said, "The man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Do not suffer twice, once from the challenge, and again from the need to be seen enduring it. Modern thinkers like James Clear remind us that habits define identity. Every time you act with integrity in private, you cast a vote for the person you wish to become. So practice being the kind of person who doesn't need recognition to stay disciplined. Wake early, train your mind, work with focus, speak little. These are the quiet virtues that shape a Stoic. Now imagine this scenario. You're facing failure. You worked hard, but no one cares. You're met with indifference, maybe even mockery. What would Marcus Aurelius do? He'd remind himself that outcomes are beyond our control. The effort was within your power, the result was not. You do your duty and let go of the rest. The reward is not praise, it's peace. As Brian Holiday says, the obstacle is the way. The lack of recognition becomes your forge. It burns away ego and reveals purpose. Halfway through this journey, pause for a moment. If this message is resonating with you, if something inside you is stirring with recognition, then don't forget to subscribe to Stoic Valor. Because here, we don't just reflect, we transform. Together, we sharpen the mind and strengthen the soul. Now let's go deeper into how to live this truth practically. When no one cares, you must become your own source of validation. Start by mastering your inner dialogue. Replace thoughts like "no one supports me" with "I am capable of supporting myself." This is not arrogance, it's accountability. You stop waiting for emotional rescue. You build internal stability. Like a Stoic fortress, your peace becomes unbreachable because it no longer depends on others. Another practice: detach from outcomes. The Stoics called this amor fati, the love of fate. Whatever happens, embrace it fully. If you succeed, remain humble. If you fail, remain calm. You realize that both success and failure are just passing moments. Your job is to stay centered. When no one cares about your efforts, love the process itself. Every repetition, every small improvement becomes sacred. You no longer chase recognition, you chase mastery. And in this pursuit, routine is your ally. Create a daily structure that reflects self-respect. Wake at the same hour. Move your body. Read something wise. Reflect in silence. Discipline is love directed inward. It's how you prove to yourself that you care, even if no one else does. Epictetus would remind his students that external neglect is irrelevant when internal order is strong. You cannot control who notices your journey, but you can control whether you walk it with honor. Let's confront one of life's harshest lessons. Sometimes even those you love most won't care as deeply as you wish. They may not understand your pain, your vision, your drive. That's okay. Stoicism teaches compassion, not resentment. Understand that everyone carries their own burden. Expecting them to carry yours only leads to disappointment. You can love deeply without demanding understanding in return. That is strength. That is freedom. Modern society tells you to seek attention. Stoicism tells you to seek excellence. One fades when the crowd changes. The other endures even in solitude. The man or woman who walks through the noise of the world unbothered, focused, calm, that person holds real power. Because when no one cares, they keep walking. When others mock, they keep building. When silence greets their effort, they keep striving. That is what it means to live stoically. You might be wondering, doesn't this mindset make you emotionless? Quite the opposite. It makes you sincere. When you no longer perform for attention, your kindness becomes genuine. Your actions become pure. You help because it's right, not because you want praise. You forgive because it brings peace, not because it's expected. You work hard because it fulfills you, not because someone might notice. So how do you embody this daily? Begin with 3 Stoic habits. First, practice emotional minimalism. When frustration arises because someone ignored you or didn't support your effort, say to yourself, "This is outside my control." Repeat it until the emotion dissolves. Second, act in silence. Complete tasks without announcing them. Let results speak. Let progress be your language. Third, end your day with gratitude, not for others' recognition, but for your own resilience. Write down 3 things you handled well, even when unnoticed. Over time, you will notice a shift. The noise of the world fades. The need for validation weakens. You begin to live in harmony with yourself. You realize that the universe was never withholding love or attention. It was offering you a lesson in independence. As the Stoics taught, external care is uncertain, but inner peace is a choice renewed every day. You can choose to be disturbed, or you can choose to be calm. You can seek attention, or you can seek growth. When no one cares, keep caring deeply, but direct that care toward your own discipline, your own purpose, your own virtue. There comes a moment when the noise fades. The opinions, the judgments, the expectations all dissolve into silence. At first, it feels like abandonment. You look around and no one seems to care about your struggles, your pain, or your effort. But then something shifts. You realize the silence isn't punishment, it's space. It's the quiet arena where true strength is born. This is where the Stoic stands, alone but not lonely, calm but not detached, free but not indifferent. When you finally accept that no one cares, everything changes. You stop waiting for the world to validate your worth, and you begin to build it yourself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Those words are a sword that cuts through illusion. Stop waiting to be understood. Stop begging to be seen. Be the kind of person who doesn't need applause to act with integrity. Be the one who does what is right, even when no one's watching. That is what makes a Stoic powerful. His peace depends on no one but himself. You may wonder, but if no one cares, why keep trying? Why keep giving? Because meaning doesn't come from being cared for. It comes from caring despite it all. The Stoic doesn't withdraw from life. He engages with it fully, knowing it owes him nothing. When you stop asking, why don't they care? And start asking, how can I live with virtue regardless? You transcend the ordinary. You become unshakable. Think about it. The universe is vast, timeless, indifferent. Yet here you are, a spark of consciousness, capable of choice, of reflection, of virtue. The Stoics didn't see this indifference as cruel. They saw it as beautiful. Because in that indifference lies the freedom to shape your character without interference. The universe neither favors nor punishes. It simply allows. And within that allowance, you are free to choose who you become. Epictetus reminded his students, "No man is free who is not master of himself." When no one cares, mastery becomes your refuge. You no longer depend on others to hold you steady. You anchor yourself. You cultivate calm through discipline. You create meaning through action. You find purpose in the simple act of doing your duty, regardless of recognition. The Stoic life is not about suppressing emotion. It's about mastering it. You still feel sadness, disappointment, anger, but you no longer let them define your behavior. When someone ignores your efforts, you no longer crumble. You observe. You accept. You continue. That quiet endurance, that steady fire, that Stoic strength. Let's imagine a moment. You're standing in a crowd unseen. No one notices the battle you're fighting inside. No one applauds your resilience. No one thanks you for your sacrifices. And yet, in that very moment, if you can look inward and whisper, "I see myself. I know my worth," you have achieved freedom. You have become what the Stoics called autarks, self-sufficient, content within yourself. Ryan Holiday once wrote, "Ego is the enemy." And when you accept that no one cares, you strip the ego away. You no longer live to be admired, you live to be aligned. The applause fades, the noise disappears, and what remains is authenticity. You no longer act from insecurity, but from intention. You no longer chase recognition, you chase truth. This acceptance doesn't make you colder, it makes you more compassionate. Because once you stop expecting others to care for you, you begin to care more deeply for them, not out of need, but out of love. You understand that everyone is fighting unseen battles. Everyone is doing their best to survive in a world that rarely pauses for anyone. This understanding softens you. It replaces bitterness with empathy. That's the paradox of Stoicism. Detachment leads to deeper connection. When no one cares, life tests your purpose. It asks, will you still create even if no one watches? Will you still help even if no one thanks you? Will you still persevere even if no one believes? The Stoic answers yes, because he doesn't act for applause. He acts for excellence. He doesn't need an audience. His audience is his own conscience. The next time you feel invisible, remember this: invisibility can be your greatest advantage. When no one expects anything from you, you are free to exceed every expectation. When no one watches, you can focus purely on growth. When no one supports you, you discover the immense power of self-support. That's where transformation happens, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows of solitude. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." How much time have you wasted trying to be noticed, trying to prove your worth to those who cannot see it? What if you took all that energy and redirected it toward your purpose, your discipline, your evolution? You would become unstoppable, because when no one cares, you stop performing and you start living. Every obstacle becomes fuel. Every silence becomes strength. Every disappointment becomes a reminder, I do not need their care to care about my life. You begin to realize that caring for yourself, truly, deeply, consistently, is the most radical act of courage there is. So how do you carry this into your days? When you wake, remind yourself, today I will act with virtue, whether praised or ignored. When you face rejection, whisper, this does not define me. When you feel unseen, remember, my worth is not measured by attention. These are not just affirmations, they are declarations of freedom. You are teaching your mind to live independently of the world's noise. If you live this way long enough, something miraculous happens. You stop needing to be unbreakable, because nothing can break what no longer clings. You stop fearing solitude, because solitude becomes your sanctuary. You stop seeking meaning from others, because meaning begins to radiate from within. That's the secret of Stoicism. It doesn't ask you to stop feeling, it teaches you to stop depending. It doesn't demand you stop loving, it asks you to love without expectation. It doesn't want you to stop caring, it wants you to care wisely. To give because it's right, not because it's reciprocated. To act from virtue, not vanity. To live as though the world owes you nothing, and in doing so, discover that it has already given you everything. So when you find yourself alone, standing in that silence where no one seems to care, don't despair, smile, because in that moment you are free. You are no longer at the mercy of indifference. You are the captain of your fate, the guardian of your peace, the author of your own story. And that's when everything truly changes. If this message helped you see your path more clearly, then help someone else by sharing it. Subscribe to Stoic Valor, and together we'll continue this journey toward inner strength and unshakable calm. Remember, no one has to care for you to live a life that matters. Care anyway. Live fully. Stand firm. That is Stoic Valor.